Hey, well, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Collision Live. Daniel here, and joined at the desk, as I always am, by the sophisticated classical symphony to my noisy heavy metal jam, Mr. Samuel David Kemp. What is up?
Oh, not too much, Daniel. It's been a busy week in culture.
Definitely lots.
And I was listening to classical music earlier today.
And I was listening to noisy heavy metal jams. Hey, fiction and reality, they blend together. But like Sam said, this has been a crazy week. This personally has been a crazy week in our culture. Definitely lots of stuff for us to dig in, to talk to. But I want to thank you guys. If this is your first time joining us, or if you're returning again to have more conversations with us, this is our weekly live show where we look at things happening in culture and approach it as Christians and to kind of look at what Scripture says and whether it's topical or trends or controversies, all that kind of fun stuff. So could you, we'd love to have you join the conversation, jump in the comment sections, obviously be respectful, don't be a jerk, especially this week with some of the stuff we're going to get into, but definitely we'll have to have those conversations. But this has been a crazy week. Anything going on in the world of Sam Camp?
Well, my youngest sibling and little sister got married this past weekend, so that was fun. We had family in from out of town, and so it's just a week full of festivities, and excited to not have any festivities, hopefully for the next couple of weeks as we recover. So it was a great time though. So
and speaking of the need to recover and a great time, my wife is out of town. She's at an art teacher conference doing art teacher stuff with other art people. So I'm chilling, having a bachelor week with my boys. We've been doing all the stuff that the mom wanted to approve of. Introduced them to Jurassic Park the other day. Probably way too early than they should have.
did I see a Jaws theme?
And there was. I don't know if we have a picture of this game or not. In the family board game, like all family board games should be, featuring my opportunity to be a shark and eat the characters of my kids. A nice wholesome entertainment. So me and my boys had, this was a Father's Day gift to myself for such an occasion.
Of course.
So we broke that open with mom out of town, and we had a lot of fun. So we're having fun. Actually have both little kids are in the studio today. Bring your kids to work day. So hey, if you hear some talking in the background or something, you can blame me for that. But there's a lot of stuff for us to get into. A lot of kind of important issues and cultural stuff. So why don't we just kick things off like we always do with pop culture news. So let's run through a few of these kind of big, kind of the bigger, just sort of newsy stories before we get into our topics. Maybe the biggest one, somewhat tragic, perhaps. Not as tragic, not to give you false expectations. He didn't die; he's still going. But John Williams, the GOAT, the great composer, he must be pushing 90, has announced that the Indiana Jones 5, the upcoming movie, I think it comes out next year, will probably be his last movie score. He's been doing this thing for decades. Again, he composed the score for Jaws and Star Wars and all those great things. We're facing the reality of a world without John Williams music, so that's sad. Another story, not necessarily a breaking news, but Harry Potter, just a couple of days ago, actually celebrated its 25th anniversary. Kind of crazy. Again, this is the book, not the movies. But this kind of seems like this thing is so ingrained in culture and has been so kind of all over the place. 25 years. So again, obviously that really shaped kind of pop culture and the landscape in a lot of different ways. Speaking of things that are also making news in pop culture, Top Gun Maverick. My personal favorite movie of the year, and I'm definitely not alone with that. This movie crossed $1 billion at the box office. First movie this year to do this. This a roaring success. And kind of the other side of this story, which is maybe more a conversation. Lightyear, the recent Pixar movie, is not doing the Tom Cruise Top Gun thing. It is free falling. This thing is becoming is a big flop. Obviously, a lot of conversations about that. Why is a Pixar movie, which should be successful, is it just sort of, the go woke, go broke? Is it just the same sex thing? Is it a wider discussion? We got into some of that last week, but definitely kind of an ongoing story. Duffer Brothers, the creators of Stranger Things, are in the news. Kind of in between before the next week, the last episodes of the current season have been talking about a spinoff because, hey, of course there's going to be spinoffs. Money. But hey, I'm actually really enjoying this season of Stranger Things, so I'm excited for this. But the last kind of newsy story, and definitely one that I am excited for, The first pictures were released for the orcs in the upcoming Rings of Power. No, this is not a headshot of Sam Camp. This is an orc in the upcoming Rings of Power show. These things look fantastic. My hype level is through the roof for this show, as should be expected. So definitely excited for that. But that's all we got this week in pop culture news. So any of those things stand out to you?
Well, I'm surprised you got my mugshot up there. That was a particularly early morning.
Yeah, well, I had to filter through and kind of weed out some of the bad ones to get one that.
Yeah, well, I think you got my best side for that one for sure. No, very excited about Lord of the Rings. Sad that John Williams won't be composing anymore, but I guess all good things must come to an end, and at least we have a huge catalog of epic music and a lifetime of awesome composing from him.
And even in that article or in that interview when he said it might be his last movie, he even hinted that maybe it would even be the last movie for Harrison Ford, and that would go out together. But my heart couldn't quite take that reality of losing them both, so I didn't throw that in the news section. But yeah, all good things come to an end. But speaking of coming to an end, that's a good segue right into our first topic, which is really kind of the biggest topic just in general for culture.
You may have heard of it.
Yeah, you may have heard of it if you have social media or don't live under a rock. But the big landmark kind of Supreme Court decision on the Roe versus Wade and kind of abortion rights, and that's the whole conversation that came out just a couple of days ago. Has this thing has just sort of swallowed up all the other conversations going on. A lot of things to get into, so we're going to get into it again. We're not a politics show, so we're not going to maybe get into like some of the legal stuff or that side of it, but kind of approaching it from this sort of culture, approaching it from Hollywood and kind of what that means for the entertainment industry and how Christians can engage with that, because there's definitely been this thing's kind of been manifesting in several different ways. And we can kind of maybe dialogue a bit about all these things, but kind of the first one is, as is expected, the Hollywood reacts. The celebrities have been very quick to kind of go on their platforms and and kind of preach their against some of this and kind of railing and using profane language and all that kind of stuff against the Supreme Court. Is sort of news headlines everywhere about Harry Styles says this and Olivia Rodrigo says this, and so that's kind of all over the place. So I thought we would just start there. Obviously, I think maybe the more meaty stuff of this we can get into after, but. What do you think about that? Like, does it matter? Is this something that we just tune out and who cares? Is there anything to that? As Christians, should we be aware of that? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think personally, you should probably tune it out. Like who really cares what some celebrity thinks really about anything? Like, just personally, that doesn't really affect me, but I think the maybe the important side or the other side of that coin is that these are the people who are influential in culture, and especially singers or musicians, movie stars, etc. We can think their opinions are dumb, or we could totally disagree with them, or think that they're uneducated in matters of national policy or whatever, but the fact is they're the ones who are especially I think younger people looking up to, and I think there should be a recognition that what sort of Hollywood is thinking and how they're feeling on a certain issue, you better believe that that's going to be influential in the sort of content that Hollywood is going to be pushing forward, in the days to come.
Yeah, and I think maybe that, and a second we'll kind of segue, because I think there is a more important part of this. But I do think on the one hand, like, who cares? Like, I'm not, my opinion on like the sanctity of life isn't going to derive from like, what some like Taylor Swift, says in an interview on some talks. So in some sense, I don't know if it necessarily moves the dial too much. I do think, and again, we've said this sort of before, that I think they have every right to say it. I know there's it's kind of the initial like response to some of this is always like, hey, just stick to whatever you're doing, and we don't need to hear your opinion. And like, again, I think we can tune that out. Like, I don't care about their opinion, but I do, like, I think there is some level of like hypocrisy with it, where like, like if a Christian celebrity comes out to with like a very strong kind of pro-life stance, like you better believe that's going to be the headline in every story on like,
Yeah.
every Christian news site, and like we'll be championing him, and like like
Yeah.
even like Tim Tebow was famous for like his like pro-life Super Bowl ad, and no one was saying stick to football then, like, or at least they weren't saying that from like the Christian kind of
Right,
side
right.
of it. So I think there is sort of a sense of like stick to acting or singing, unless
your
you're on our.
opinion sort of validates ours or is in line with what we believe. And I think that goes on both sides. Like I think sort of a great maybe litmus test of this is like what people were sort of in support of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, and said, well, this is his right to do this, and who was against that. And then like the exact opposite of that is like who supports Tim Tebow for doing whatever he's doing on the field or off the field, and then who is telling him to just stick to being a backup QB or whatever. And so I think like you have like it's just a mirror image on both sides. So you have if it's everybody is against celebrities speaking out on things until they're speaking out on behalf of whatever thing you hold dear.
Yeah, I guess
And so
I think
it's on both sides.
yeah, it's probably
for sure.
less of like a just stick to this, and more of like a just don't say things we disagree with. And again, I think we should disagree with it because a lot of these celebrities are saying stupid things that should be disagreed with, should be wrestled with. But I do think as a starting point, like I don't think kind of silencing and just sort of like like I think, hey, people have the right to share opinion. Most people that are sharing opinions, telling celebrities to stick to whatever they're doing, are speaking out on the same issue that's not connected to their own job or whatever. So I think kind of the more valuable kind of starting, I guess, posture is just like, hey, you don't need to silence people. Let people share their thoughts in this, have a discussion. That's kind of the point of even the decision. It's kind of bring it back into the cultural discussion and like, not just sort of, silence that discussion by making it, a federal kind of law enacted. But I think like, but dialogue with that, kind of get in with it. Cause I think that's where more, again, I don't think a celebrity saying something, like we know what these people think already. I don't think that's going to turn the dial. I do think maybe the more, I hate to say battleground, 'cause that sounds a little too like, it's the culture war, and that's just not my my approach to things. But I think more of like where things get a little more messy, and I think we need to engage a bit more is sort of how that filters into like the media and the entertainment. And I saw there's we can throw this up on the screen. Neon. This is like an independent production company distribution. They've done like I, Tonya and Parasite. So some of like the bigger, not like the blockbusters necessarily, but more of the like Oscar bait kind of movies. They posted something on their social media, and they've linked it to their website. And maybe I'll read just part of this. And then we can kind of dialogue about that. But again, it's talking to say, hey, we need to not stay silent about the tax on the abortion rights. And they say, and here's sort of the kicker. It says, film is our best form of protest. Our films and filmmakers inspire us to resist oppression and raise funds in support of independent grassroots organizations that are committed to protecting the rights and safety of people in the United States. And then we don't need to maybe read the rest. Or we all have a role to play in the fight for reproductive freedom. Join us. And then the Neon pro-choice. Basically kind of a call to action to kind of use the, not just speak about, from like, a personal, on the stage or in interviews, but actually kind of let that mindset, that approach to the issue, like kind of filter into the movies. And I do think there is some, film is our best form of protest, said the filmmaker. Again, that's, that's like, poetry will save the world, said the poet. Like, of course they think film is like the most thing, but again, it is. And we even, was it last week that we talked a bit about like,
I think it was, yeah.
And we even touched on like the guns issue. You had like the open letter with all the filmmakers saying, hey, we need to use media, movies to like shape this conversation. And so you sort of see that same mindset here of like, hey, maybe this actress saying it on the stage isn't necessarily going to change anyone's mind unless it's this very young and impressionable person. But I do think like media and like kind of normalizing what they depict, like, there is sort of power in like the visual. So what do you think of?
Yeah, well, I mean, your recent article on this and our discussion about it last week, I think it sort of ties in perfectly to that, because it's not, it's not going to be the personal opinions and tweets from celebrities or famous people that I think are going to sway too much of the hearts and minds of of just everyday people. But I think it'll be the movies that come out that have emotional beats and guide your feelings through some of these issues that I think will begin to have an effect on culture and how we as a society view particular issues. And I think that would be something to be more concerned about, be more aware of. I mean, and just in general, like we talked about last week, just it's not the messages, like the overt messages of film that you should really be too concerned about. It's more the more subtle, more emotional, feeling side, perspective side of things that I think can sort of creep in to influence how you think about a particular issue or a particular person. And I think that in the long term is going to have a much more impactful sort of shaping of culture.
Yeah, because you know, like a lot of like the on the level of like an intellectual arguments, like, you know, a lot of like the pro-abortion stuff, just it's flimsy. It's very hard to sustain that. So sort of the way around that, I think, for that position is like to sort of normalize it through media. Like, you know, that's sort of some of the discussion that we had with like Lightyear and like the same-sex relationship, and like it's less that you're trying to like argue and like prove. It's just that like,
right,
hey, we're trying to make people feel like, you know, hey, these characters had an abortion, and it was sort of this beautiful, freeing thing. And like, I do think we're going to see, I know there's been some of it in shows and stuff. I do think we'll see just like a spike in like abortions and like that, sort of those conversations, obviously presented in like a very
in a very positive light.
Like, it's just, you know, freedom, and I'm, you know,
we'll skip over the depression and the regret and the what ifs, you know, 10 years down the road. But look, she has a great career now, and like I think you're very much going to see a lot of that in the years to come.
Yeah, so I do think that's where, obviously, you know, I don't want to be like the Neon, where, you know, that's gonna be the battleground. I think this is a conversation that's gonna be filtering in lots of different areas, but I do think the media and stuff is gonna be very much where some of this stuff, like, in more subtle ways, kind of has an influence. And kind of maybe the third way, I think, and then we can kind of move on to our some other topics. But it's just sort of using not necessarily like making stories about abortion, but just kind of framing, I guess, the discussion using existing kind of pop culture and media. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's already happened, like with The Handmaid's Tale. That's very much just become like the standard sort of imagery to use for this discussion. And I think even like author Stephen King, like the other day, you know, right after the Supreme Court decision, like tweeted out, you know, like, I guess we're living in The Handmaid's Tale now, and like, you know, people are like protesting in like the red outfits, and like I think there is like, in one sense, like, that's dumb, like, you know, you know, trying to attach it to some like fictional thing, but like, I think there is power in like sort of giving these like visual cues that kind of shape the discussion. Like, what do you?
Oh yeah, for sure. And I would say too that sort of, let's say, like, you know, leftists or like left-leaning culture is, I think, much more adept at using like pop culture imagery to shape a narrative, like whether or not it's true or whatever. But it's sort of the imagery. I think they're very effective at using that imagery, and also sort of little catchphrases or slogans that there's a real stickiness to them, and I think that just allows sort of the conversation, at least, to be more around, you know, if you can control where the conversation goes and not have to address other issues, then you can kind of control the narrative as a whole. And so I think you know, Hollywood, I guess you could say at large, is quite good at sort of putting out those little, whether they're memes or just imagery or slogans that can be very effective in just controlling and steering that narrative.
Yeah, and it kind of simplifies the narrative, like the complex thing, and makes it very much like, well, this is bad, and if we're like this, then this must be bad. And maybe, like, I know it's not the same a one-to-one, but like sort of like from like the pro-life side, like I think a lot of the advances that have happened have been through visuals and like showing like the ultrasounds, and even like, I know there's been some movies that kind of highlighted some of the stuff that in some ways this whole discussion has always sort of been a bit of like a visual battle, less than like a people convincing rationally. Like it is sort of an
Yeah.
emotional thing that kind of confronting. So I do think there's stuff to it. Obviously, there's a lot more we can get into. With that, but definitely this is going to be a conversation that is going to have I think a wide-reaching and probably long-lasting influence through the arts, through movies. I think in subtle ways. I think especially in things that are aimed at like teens, like Netflix shows and stuff. I think you're gonna. I know there already is a lot of that stuff, but you're definitely gonna see some of that. So let us know what you guys think. If you guys sort of how you think this discussion, kind of the Hollywood reaction, the media, maybe as Christians, sort of how do we kind of engage with that? How do we navigate that and kind of respond to that? I want to say we got a comment, just commenting on our Van Gogh in the background, our Harry Potter Van Gogh. My wife painted that thing. Again, Van Gogh is one of my favorite painters as well, and definitely a very interesting character from even like a religious standpoint. He wanted to be a missionary, was rejected, ended up being a painter. A lot to that. But something that I know is always very interesting and always has me at the edge of my seat. We have our next segment of our show. We got Host Corner.
Well, Daniel, for once, I think this host corner maybe has a bit of overlap in our interests, although it's historically not the case. I want to talk about probably the greatest TV show ever made, and that is Fringe. And if you haven't watched it, what's wrong with you? You should certainly avail yourself of that. I think you can watch it on Freevee, which I think is some IMDb's like movie thing with commercials, but I'm sure you can find it other places. This was sort of like the mid-aughts, I guess 2008 is when it came out. But it's a J.J. Abrams produced and I think directed it as well. It's got some amazing actors in it: Anna Torv, Joshua Jackson, John Noble, Lance Reddick, even Jared Harris is in it. And it's sort of the combination of science, FBI stuff, time travel, psychedelics. It's just an amazing wild ride, and it's a super fun sort of mystery thriller sci-fi mashup, and I think it's just glorious.
So I'll admit, I think maybe you were right. This is sort of one of those rare moments where me and Sam are into the same pop culture stuff. It is a great show. This is one of the ones that whenever it was coming out, it was right after me and my wife, I think, got married, and we were still living in like some small apartment. We got just hooked on this thing.
Yeah.
I think enough seasons were already out. Like
we could binge through.
We could binge through, and then until we got to like the last couple of seasons. But definitely worth checking out. Definitely very much a J.J. Abrams show.
Yeah.
Lost is probably my favorite show of all time, and it has a lot of the same things that I liked about like the mystery box kind of stuff.
Right.
Like the things go wild and crazy at the end of it.
But it's just fantastic. I think it's some of the best TV, I think.
Yeah, and it's one of those that I think it has like maybe like a cult following, but like doesn't get
Nobody talks about it.
Like
I know, that's the thing.
Sort of
It's
went
like
under the radar. People forget about it. I think there's like what is it, five seasons? So it's not like
yeah, 08 to 2013, I think was sort of the run time. But yeah, I think 5 or 6 seasons.
So again, not like some huge 15 season commitment. So check it out if you haven't seen it. Hey, good TV. There's a lot of bad TV out there, so find the good stuff and enjoy that. But speaking of the good stuff, I thought kind of for our second sort of discussion of the day, maybe something a little bit lighter than our first one, something that we've sort of touched on as this was happening. But just the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. This thing finished its run last week, kind of the day after we had our last Collision Live episode, and I think we should, we probably won't get around to doing like an official review on this thing. So I thought we could just sort of use this show to talk a little bit about our thoughts, talk, what we thought of the show, and also I think there is a lot of like Christian themes and stuff going on in there that we can kind of think through or latch on to or wrestle with. So we can get into some of that as well. But we've both finished. I think you finished, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we've both seen this. Don't totally spoil the show. And we'll try not to like necessarily spoil everything if you haven't seen the show.
Good news is, I think we all know how it ends.
Yeah,
I mean, we know the ultimate end.
Yeah, Obi-Wan doesn't die, so we'll spoil that. But what were your overall thoughts for this show?
Yeah, I mean, I think like on the whole, I thought it was really good. I think there is a bit of loss of like stakes maybe because we know like A New Hope is a decade down the road and sort of the storyline, and so there kind of feels like there's not a whole lot at stake because you kind of know where the show is gonna, where it's sort of leading to. But I think overall 2 thumbs up. But I mean, I could be sort of nitpicky and annoyed.
1.5 thumbs up.
Yeah, 1 3/4 maybe. I don't know. But it was good. I enjoy. I mean, it's good television. It's Star Wars. And I think they nailed quite a few parts of it.
Yeah, and maybe I'll. I know we don't have like tons of time in our show. It's kind of a soapbox. Maybe one day I'll do a host corner on this, but I do think because there is sort of the stakes thing, and I do get that. Like is he gonna die? Like we obviously know who dies, what happens. We know where they go. It's sort of the problem with any like prequel story. But I do think that I think maybe this sort of this like shock and cliffhanger culture. Maybe some of it can come in from like a Game of Thrones or something like. It's sort of just the idea that like life and death is like the only stakes in a show. And it's because the same thing was like Rogue One or some of the other shows, like where I think, the emotional stakes, like the journey, like, there are a lot of other ways to like have stakes or, like some of that importance beyond just like, will he live or will he die? Like, I think some of the emotional stuff with Kenobi, I think was really good. I'm kind of like you. I think like, I enjoyed the show a lot because it's Star Wars. I watched it with my kids. Like, we're excited every week when this came on. There's definitely some good moments and Vader and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think in some ways it maybe didn't land quite as strong as it could have. I think some of the writing and like the directing and stuff just wasn't as good as it could have been. And just sort of, almost every episode, like, someone like defeats their enemy and then just like walks away and lets them live, and like things that just don't really make sense beyond like, oh well, they can't die, so I guess
I don't like, was this gonna be the show where like everyone doesn't die because it's like, I'll stab you with a lightsaber, but you'll be back, and then I'll
do you, but then I'll leave you, and then Vader's leaving Kenobi and Kenobi's leaving Vader, and it's some of that stuff. Maybe you got to turn off some of the like this like the critical eye of like things that don't make sense. Again, this is like a space wizard show. So I think there's some of that, but I do think that there is a lot of good stuff to it, and I think part of what I enjoyed about the show, which is maybe we can kind of move into some like the sort of Christian themes or things that are going on, is that at least to me it kind of brought back some of the like, which maybe this will get me in trouble with some viewers, like the mystical, like, but like we've sort of moved away, like the Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and even like some of the where there's just been like this move to like, Star Wars is about Jedis, but here's Star Wars without Jedis, and I guess very much trying to like not have like lightsabers.
Here's
like
a practical Star Wars.
Yeah, it's sort of all like,
here's an everyman Star Wars.
This kind of this obsession with like, here's like the gritty underbelly, and it's all like crime and bounty hunters, and like, again, I think that stuff's cool. I think Mandalorian is great, but I think part of what I enjoy about Star Wars, and even what I kind of appreciate as a Christian, is more of that like spiritual. Obviously, not that like the Force is 1-to-1. That's the Holy Spirit. This is a Christian show. Not that. Like, I know people have had issues with some of that. Sort of like the pagan almost spirituality and stuff. But just dealing with issues of like belief and faith.
Yeah.
And Kenobi kind of brought that back. Like, kind of obviously he's a Jedi, and sort of I guess the memes go like he space Jesus. Like but like I think on a more serious level, like he. I think sort of his journey of like doubts and like it's not that he doesn't believe in the Force, but he's kind of distanced himself and kind of lost hope. I don't know. Do you see?
No, I mean, I think that's the real power of the show, is that it's really about Obi-Wan's journey, not so much about like ultimate stakes of the universe and sort of the Empire versus the Rebels kind of stuff. It's more like there's this one guy who kind of needs to like find his self and his faith again, and I think that's probably the strongest points in the show, and so I really enjoyed that part of it, and I think Ewan McGregor does a fantastic job of sort of bringing out that aspect in Obi-Wan, and I think that's really what the main crux of the show is about, is sort of Obi-Wan kind of getting his mojo back, I guess, in a sense, like being confident again in the Force and in his ability and sort of in the good and in the universe.
Yeah, because kind of like, again, with the disclaimer that like, hey, we're in America filming this, and like compared to almost anywhere else in the world, like as Christians, like we're not persecuted. Like, we're very, we have things very much is very good for us compared to most places. But it is, I think, like our culture is very much moving into sort of this like post-Christian society, and I think there is parallels even like with his journey. Like he's sort of the Jedi; they were sort of at the peak, and sort of even you can even make parallels to sort of like the the abuses of the church and kind of getting involved in the politics and all that kind of stuff. But like sort of like the society around it sort of moved on. Like they're even like hunted and stuff. And like I think part of what makes the show interesting for Christians is this sort of finding some of those parallels. Like here, he feels hunted. He feels like he just is best just to sort of stay silent and stay hidden and not get involved. And society sort of abandoned them. And I do think there is some parallels there. And kind of the quote that stood out to me. They even use this like in I think in like the first trailer maybe, but the idea that like they can't stay hidden forever. Like this is sort of become a part of who they are. Now this is I think the Grand Inquisitor is the guy saying this. It says the key to hunting Jedi is patience. Jedi cannot help what they are. Their compassion leaves a trail. The Jedi code is like an itch. They cannot help it. And just sort of saying, hey, if that's really who they are, what they believe, like they can't stay silent forever. Like they're compelled. Something compels them to help and to get involved and to like and this that line about compassion leaves a trail. Like I don't know, like as a Christian, like not to like over hammer it to like it's a Christian allegory. It's not a Christian allegory, but like I don't know, that there is.
No, I think it's very strong. Yeah, I mean I think there is very strong parallels in that, and I think it is sort of really well displayed, I think, through the movie, and then or through the show, and you see Obi-Wan just sort of trying to suppress that itch scratching, if you will, throughout, and it's sort of his journey to realization that he is compelled to help and like do the right thing and not just kind of hide away into obscurity, and he is sort of you almost get the sense that it is his calling to be a Jedi and to actually to intervene in the lives of those that he can and save who he can, and even the dynamic between like Anakin and Obi-Wan is sort of like it's Obi-Wan's sort of drive to help people, to save people, that Anakin / Darth Vader sort of thinks is going to be his downfall, and it's sort of the same even with like you can look at even the Frodo, his mercy to Gollum, yeah, sorry, to Gollum. It's like, well, that seems like a dumb move, but ultimately that's sort of the redemption, because sort of that mercy kind of wins in the end.
Yeah, because the other line again, seeing Hayden Christensen, like whatever you say about the prequels, and I know a lot of them aren't good, even though I've kind of come around to them and enjoy them a lot more, but like it's good to have him back as Anakin. Some of those scenes, but one of the lines like between him and Kenobi, where Kenobi says they're dueling, it says, "You grow too aggressive, Anakin. Be mindful. Jedi's goal is to defend life, not take it." And then Anakin says, "Mercy doesn't defeat an enemy, Master, which is why you're going to lose." And just sort of like maybe this is like the benefit of knowing like the rest of the story. Like, what you lose in stakes is like again, like, Kenobi having mercy on Anakin and not just sort of giving in to his anger and like walking away. Knowing like ultimately like that sort of mercy is going to lead to, step by step to saving Anakin and overthrowing evil, and that it wasn't just, that like he sort of like vindicated that, hey, it's not just about power and overcoming evil with might, and that it is sort of about like the mercy. And like, again, if you say like the Lord of the Rings, very much that it is sort of this the goodness. So no, I think there's a lot of stuff in this show that I liked. I know they're talking about like a second season. I hope they don't do a second season.
Yeah,
they kind of fired the bullets with like, I don't know, like how do you top like having Darth Vader in it again? Like,
yeah, I really hope. I mean, I know they like left it's all there. Like there's obviously plenty of room to do a second season. I really hope they don't. I think what would be cool, and this is my pitch, I guess, to
so Disney's listening,
Lucasfilms. I think it would be cool to kind of do like an early life of like Leia or something. Like if she gets up to shenanigans,
like teenage Leia,
right? Yeah, like, I could see there being, and I thought the actress who played Kid Leia did just a fantastic job, and I think she just nailed that role. But I feel like that could be a really interesting, sort of in a sense low stakes, but kind of a fun mini series, sort of about like the life of the princess, and like maybe she sees some of these things, how they do Easter eggs and shows and stuff, and I don't know. I think that could be a kind of a fun, low stakes, interesting sort of exploration of sort of the early days of Leia. I don't know.
Yeah,
I think that would be cool.
And then you end it right leading up to Rogue One, and you just tie the whole thing together in a massive story.
And I will say that, like, and someone told me this the other day. Actually, my brother was saying that he really liked how, like, in the Marvel universe, everything is pretty well tied together, and there's sort of a grand narrative and theme and everything sort of is interconnected. Whereas in the Star Wars universe, it's sort of like nobody knows what's going on, and it's very much like, we'll try this and we'll try that, and that didn't work. Well, it's so there just seems more discombobulated sort of in all these additional Star Wars sort of offshoots that have happened, and so hopefully they can kind of tighten some of that up.
And just can't keep filling in the gaps and kind of make this big. This big kind of overarching thing. And again, someone like me will definitely eat all that stuff up because I'm a nerd and I'm into that stuff. But hey, let's not get that of Kenobi again. We probably won't get around to doing like an official review of it, but we'd like to talk about it. It is sort of the biggest show going, sort of it in Stranger Things 4. So definitely lots to talk about there. But kind of the last segment of our show, end things off with this week at the Collision. Got a lot of stuff going on here at the Collision. I got some new articles. Encourage you to check it out. The one that just dropped yesterday, how movies influence us and what Christians should do about it. Obviously, this I wrote this I think before the Supreme Court decision, but some of that kind of ties into with what we were talking about. That hey, it is we kind of Christians tend to reduce movies and stuff to like a message, what's the message? And it's all very intellectual, like philosophical, where like the reality is like movies are emotional. Movies impact us emotionally way more than they do through like the message. And so kind of get into that and how do you kind of guard against that and engage with that. And then reviews. We got some new reviews, got some existing reviews. If you haven't checked out our review for Lightyear, definitely one of the most buzzy talked about movies for Christians to wrestle with.
Was that a dad joke?
Oh, I didn't even catch it. See, when you've been a dad for as long as I have, you just do it naturally. But so check that out. I kind of get into some of the stuff, and again, the controversial same-sex stuff. But even beyond that, of just what else is happening in this movie, how do we respond? And I will be going with my two boys to see Minions. Everyone loves the Minions. I love the Minions. You love the Minions. My kids love the Minions. So we'll be checking that out on Thursday, and then we'll be dropping a review for that on Friday. So if you're excited for the Minions, or you have kids and you're going to be going to the theater to see that, I encourage you to check out that review. And hopefully there's not as anything as messy or ambiguous or stuff to wrestle with like there was in Lightyear. And hopefully this is a fun movie. But hey, we'll see. You never know these days with Hollywood. But I want to thank you guys for joining us. Again, encourage you to join us next week. Every week, Tuesday at noon. There's always stuff to talk about. Always love to have these conversations. Thanks for those of you that were in the chat having a conversation. Again, we'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing here at the Collision. If you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel, like this video. I'll do all the stuff you know to do. Join us with what we're doing. But most of all, guys, stay safe. Be nice on the internet and continue to collide with your world for Christ.